This week on Talking Pictures with Neil Rosen, we'll look at the new movie adaptation of the stage musical The Color Purple. Ferrari, where director Michael Mann zeroes in on the fate of that auto company in the 1950s, starring Adam Driver. The Holocaust drama The Zone of Interest, and the French film Driving Madeline. We've got all that and many more movie picks coming up. I'm Neil Rosen. Welcome to Talking Pictures. It's our monthly Critic Roundtable show where we debate what's worth watching and what's not when it comes to new releases, hidden gems, and Hollywood classics. Joining me are Bill McCuddy from GoldDerby.com, Rafer Guzman from Newsday, and Mike Sargent from WBAI. Let's start off with a look at several new films in limited series in theaters and or streaming, beginning with Ferrari. Let's take a look at a clip.
You should assign me control of your stock in the company and the freehold, so I can deal.
Oh, because Henry Ford won't deal with a woman.
No. Because if it comes to a deal, it'll be hard and fast. I have to have all the cards in my hand.
Well, half the cards are in my hand.
Laura, what do you want me to say? Mr. Ford, we have a deal, but first I must wait until I ask my wife for permission?
Yes, you can say that.
Mike, tell us about Ferrari.
Ferrari's a new film by Michael Mann, and it stars Adam Driver as ex-race car driver turned auto entrepreneur Enzo Ferrari. It also stars Penelope Cruz as his long-suffering wife, Laura Ferrari, and Shailene Woodley as, well, his long-suffering mistress, Lena Lardy, who's also the mother of his, well, I don't know. Let's say, is he a legitimate son? Will he be named Ferrari? We don't know. But it's 1957, and his empire is in trouble. He needs to win this race, and it's a big race, and it's a lot at stake. And we meet Ferrari at a really not great point in his life. It's not easy to root for a guy who's cheating on his wife, who's pushing his employees, who's desperate, and we don't really know him prior to this. I think that Adam Driver does a pretty decent job. I think he plays more of a character here than just Adam Driver. But ultimately, I know there were some complaints about the effects and the crashes. I think they're fine. I think Ferrari is just a forgettable racing movie.
Bill.
Ferrari stalled for me. I couldn't get behind the fact that this was a Michael Mann movie. I've loved everything he's made before this. And how does he make Penelope Cruz unsexy? He should be shot or at least put up for trial for that. The problem is there's a love story, as you point out, between three people, but the real love story we want to see is between him and Ferrari. This is his real passion, the car company. And he's also kind of a jackass, so you really don't care for him the way you did for, let's say, Jeff Bridges in Tucker. Another movie about a guy who built a car that had passion for the company.
That was a good movie.
That's a great movie. This is not, and I'm disappointed.
You know, this is rather dull, except for the racing scenes.
Yeah, but I don't agree about the special effects. I think they go whirling out of those cars like the flying Walendas, and I think it looks really, really bad. I wish they had cut away from that.
Listen, I didn't care for Adam Driver's performance or his cheesy Italian accent that he did a similar one in House of Gucci.
Yeah.
And Shailene Woodley's Italian accent was like actually embarrassing. Michael Mann has done much better work than this. And like you, I just was not involved. I didn't really, the movie didn't get to the heart of the character. I was not really emotionally invested in the...
I think Ford versus Ferrari is a much better film.
Ford
yeah,
versus
that's the
Ferrari,
sequel. This was the prequel to Ford versus Ferrari, and it failed.
As they say in the Friends theme song, this movie was stuck in second gear. Hey, Rafer, tell us about Driving Madeline.
All right, another driving movie. So, Driving
Very
Madeline. Very
different driving.
Very different. This is a French drama. It's the story of a guy named Charles. He's a cab driver in Paris. He's a guy with some problems. You know, he's short on cash. He's about to lose his license. He's in debt. He's having a difficult day. And at the end of the day, he picks up one last fare, an older woman named Madeleine. And she doesn't really seem to be in a hurry to get anywhere. So she'd rather just sort of drive around Paris and talk to Charles. And as they talk, they learn a little bit more about each other, and they form an unlikely friendship. And I guess I would say that I've made this movie sound much, much better than it actually is.
Oh, no, this is a great movie.
You like this movie? You like this movie?
I love this movie.
You too?
I'm sorry.
I was surprised. Yeah. Okay, first of all, I don't think it starts late in the day. I think it starts early in the day, and they do movie time where they spend a few hours, but it's like the entire day. I was surprised because this movie started out, you hear driving somebody, you think of Driving Miss Daisy, so I like, okay.
Driving Mademoiselle
Well,
Daisy.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I thought, and it
be.
started out like that, where like, okay, he's younger, she's older, she's reminiscing,
Right.
but then it kind of turns into a Hitchcock movie. And they really go for Hitchcock. They have like this Bernard Herrmann sounding music and the kind of camera work he did. And I have to say, it got me because I was surprised that I liked it and I liked these characters and it went where I didn't expect it to go.
It was charming, and it started to do something that I didn't like, which was do these flashbacks to her earlier life, but then those became so rich that I was totally taken in with both storylines in both time periods. Rafer, I'm really surprised because to me this was a complete shocker. I thought it was going to be over a long period of time and he was going to be driving her for months or years or whatever, and it really is one day. And it's got a fantastic backstory, and I was crying at the end. I mean, sniffling. I highly recommend this.
I so disagree with you, Rafer. I thought this came out of left field. I mean, what a terrific surprise. I mean, in the course of this ride, she tells as you said, these flashbacks of her life, and not only are they interesting, but they become shocking. I mean, no spoiler here: spousal abuse and a blowtorch, and that's all I'm going to say. But you know,
even as you're explaining this, I'm remembering how bad this movie was. I'm sitting here trying not to splutter with indignation over this film. I couldn't believe how corny the flashbacks were. None of it worked for me. I thought it was just desperately trying to get me to cry.
Wow.
I felt my intelligence as a moviegoer was insulted by this film.
I will say a 12,000 euro cab fare they should have shown, because he was there for way too long with it.
Exactly.
Not only fascinating, but actually shocking in parts of this thing. And Linnae Renault and Danny Boone, who play the two leads, are
they're really
terrific.
good. Really good.
He's really good. I think he's really trying to do something serious with that role. Yes.
Like a young Jean Reno.
And
yes.
I could have seen him making this like 20 or 30 years ago.
Writer-director Christian Carillon has made an exceptional movie, and I love taking a ride with these two people. Rafer, in the words of McLaughlin, wrong. Bill, tell us about the Holocaust movie, The Zone of Interest.
Well, this has been getting a lot of attention, and for good reason. It's quite a fine film. It's landing on lots of 10 best lists, and it's loosely based on a true story. It's about Rudolf Hess and his wife Hedwig, who lived next to Auschwitz while he ran the horrific day-to-day operations of the camp. Christian Friedel and Anatomy of a Fall it girl, Sandra Huller, are gardening and throwing parties and living a normal life in the shadow of human smoke and ash. I can't recommend this movie enough. It has a quietness next to horror, and it was directed by a guy named Jonathan Glazer, who did Sexy Beast and some other films that are really, this is a huge turn for him, I think, and I think it deserves all the accolades it's getting.
I do not agree, but Rafer, go ahead.
I guess I'm a little of two minds on this movie. On the one hand, it's from a book by Martin Amis, one of his late period books, and that book had a very, very strong story and a very strong plot. There was an affair, there was the involvement of a Jewish prisoner, you had this kind of 3-4 characters that were involved in this very, very strong story, and none of that is here in this movie. It's all been taken away, and on the one hand, that makes it into this very powerful kind of sort of conceptual.
Complacency, or
yeah, I mean, I think what we're all thinking of is the banality of evil, that famous Hannah Arendt quote, where you really are immersed in the normalcy of these monstrous people's lives. On the other hand, the absence of a story, I found it made it a little difficult for me to get into it and care about the characters. And so but it's not a traditional film. It's something different.
You found yourself wanting to care about a guy who's running a...
Well, I found myself wanting to be a little bit more involved in some way in the humanity of them, and I felt that this movie sort of kept me at a bit of a distance. That might have been the point. I don't think this movie is a lot like that Chantal Ackerman film, Jean Delmont, where you're just sitting for 4 hours watching this woman's sort of day-to-day life. That's
I
a little
think
bit
millions
what
of
this
people
is.
at home are nodding.
Everyone knows that movie. But I think this is what that's like. It's not your regular movie. It's something different, and I think it takes some getting acclimated to.
Well, I sort of agree with both of you, but I do think I think there's some great things about it. I think, like you said, sitting there, it starts out with like a minute and a half of black. So you're being brought into this darkness, and I think he's making a statement there. And in terms of the character, no, you can't really like them. There is there's something to the idea that we can normalize anything, even to people being killed and shot. Even the kids are starting to freak out. But they do some things. They literally, this is a screenplay thing, they literally have the main character pet a puppy. And that's just to kind of show his humanity that he's got, he's a family man.
The save the cat moment.
Save the cat moment, right. So they throw that in. It doesn't make you care about him, but there's a voyeuristic experience to watching this film where you're just fascinated, like, how could they be doing this? How could they be okay with this? How could this have happened?
But that gets tiring after like a few. This movie was I had great expectations for this movie, and I thought it was a really missed opportunity. What this movie needed, which you said the book had, is juxtaposition between this family that is completely ignoring this hell horror story that's going on in Auschwitz, several feet away on the other side of the wall, and it needed to show some of those horror scenes.
Yeah, Neil, we've seen that.
Yeah, I agree.
The gray zone, the boy in the pajama.
I agree. I don't think we needed to see any
listen,
of that.
Come on.
I think hearing it was enough.
No, I think that after the first few minutes, you go, okay, look at all the stuff that's happening that they're ignoring. But an hour and a half in, we're just focusing on the trivial problems of the family. The woman's flower garden isn't blooming the way it should.
And I thought was the point.
The horror.
That's the whole point.
The wife is upset because the commandant might be transferred to another place and they might be having to move out of their idyllic house. I mean, by completely ignoring what's going on the other side of the wall, with the exceptional a couple of screams that you hear, or the exceptional the wife goes, oh, I got this mink coat from one of the Jews or something like that. Generally speaking, it just becomes this family's who cares about their trivial problems?
What you just said is the whole point of the film.
Yeah, I don't think you got
having
it.
it in the background.
I don't think you got it.
Having it in the background, never seeing it is how they were able to go day to day.
I think that's right.
And live with it. And I think that they put the viewer in that position of like hearing these awful things. You know what's happening when you hear it. You hear the screams. You hear the shots. You know they're not just firing into the air. But after a while, like you said, you're like, wow, and you're just gonna pick flowers.
I don't know. I think it could have been so much more powerful, and I think if they stuck to what they did in the book, I think it would have made a much better movie. The Color Purple is a new musical adaptation of the acclaimed stage musical. Let's take a look at a clip. Mike, my friend, tell us all about The Color Purple.
Well, this is not just the stage musical, it's also the book, and it's also a reinterpretation of the film. I think that what Bazawule has done here is a triumph. I'll be honest, I went into Color Purple not really wanting to see this. As a black person, there aren't that many movies you want to see about the past because you're like, okay, am I ready to see us being treated a certain way? But from the opening shots, what he was able to do is take this story of struggle and show the beauty of it. The songs, the performances, it's like going to the theater. I think that this is actually better than the Spielberg film, and from what I've heard, it actually takes the musical to another level. I went into this not even knowing it was a musical, and I was blown away. I thought that this film...
Hey, they started singing.
Well, I went in like 10 minutes before somebody said it's a musical, and I was like, what? But yeah, I have to say, I was really surprised at how much I like this film. And I think that there are so many performances. I will, of course, we'll come back to it, but there are certain performances that really stand out in this film.
Yeah, I was completely surprised by this thing too. I mean, I knew it was a musical. I had seen the original movie. I know they've changed a couple of things that make me want to go back and see the original. I never saw the stage production, and I think this is kind of a triumph as well. You know exactly what's going to happen to two sisters in the beginning of this thing, and it happens anyway at the end, and it's still an engrossing, engaging moment. I was stunned that I liked it, and I will mention one of the performances. Colman Domingo, who was also in Rustin, really deserves, it's a 180-degree turn from what he did in Rustin.
This guy's going to be a huge star.
He is a huge star, but he's going to be even bigger. I recommend the color purple, but I'll tell you, every time I mention it to somebody at a cocktail party, they go, oh, we saw that already. No, you haven't. Please see the musical.
I'm going to be the naysayer. I found this movie a little too obvious and just a little too on the nose. I really didn't like the sort of dancing chorus lines of the women in the skirts and then the chain gang chorus line. And I just felt that a lot of the musical numbers to me were executed in this pretty standard sort of on the stage way, except for that one number with Suge Avery and Seeley, where then we get some Busby Berkeley. Then those two look like Fred and Ginger on on a giant spinning 78, and that was inventive and that was imaginative. The rest of it just felt pretty just on the nose. It all just felt a little too. Wow.
You have no heart.
What can I tell you?
It's a really good adaptation of the stage musical to film. And it's uplifted by these great performances. I mean, Taraji P. Henson, Danielle Brooks, as you said, Colman, Domingo, Fantasia, Barrino.
Everyone's really good in it. Yeah.
Really good. The
Yes.
production design is good. The choreography of those musical numbers is excellent. I did prefer the Steven Spielberg film, but not comparing it to that on its own right, it's really, really well done. And it doesn't shy away from the brutality of the story itself, which I thought was...
It doesn't, but I think the position it takes and the sense of sisterhood is much, much stronger. And I thought Danielle Brooks, that's a name you will not forget.
Look,
Her
it's a really good
performance
movie. Again,
is really memorable.
To not agree with Rafer.
What a hater.
Bill.
Wow.
Rafer the hater.
Bill?
Did you go to it in a cab with an old lady?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
That's right.
Let's talk now about the Society of the Snow. This is on Netflix. And if you think you've seen this movie before when it was called Alive, imagine Alive if Merchant Ivory had done it. It's a 1972 Uruguayan Air Force plane that is chartered to fly a rugby team to Chile. Yes, it's that story. You know the rest, and yet this telling with an outstanding cast of unknowns feels almost like a documentary. At 2 hours and 24 minutes, it sounds long, but it has the time to feel their abandonment and isolation. Society of the Snow is one of the best new movies of this new year.
Oh, God, do I disagree with that, but I'll get to that in a minute. Mike?
I thought it was strong. I mean, this is actually the third incarnation, and there have been a couple documentaries.
There's been many
there
versions
have been
of this
many
story.
versions of
Rafer's
this
waiting
story.
for the musical.
Yeah, all right, well, there's a musical coming. But
Choreographed Numbers in the Snow.
I thought
Great
it was
movie.
strong, and I thought that this went into details we didn't see before. I understand why director J.A. Barrino did this, what he was trying to do that the other films haven't done in honoring the dead and remembering what they did to help save the others. I think it's a film that is solid, good, but it's not for everybody.
Rafer.
I loved this movie, and I was really
Finally!
surprised. Yeah, I mean,
I can't believe how much I disagree with you.
well, I always love a cannibalism movie. It speaks to my heart.
See?
No,
See?
I was really pleased about this. I think that director J.A. Barrino is a pretty interesting guy. I used to think of him as sort of Guillermo del Toro Jr. But when you look at his past movies, The Orphanage, which was kind of a horror story, definitely was a horror story. The Impossible, that movie about the Indonesian tsunami. And then he also did this movie called When a Monster Calls, the one about the tree with Liam Neeson as the voice of the tree. So he does these movies that are about like tragedy and horror, but I think he's always trying to find the meaning in them and why do these things happen to us and how can we overcome it. And I think he does a really great job here. The conversations between these people as they're starving, they're watching their friends dying. It's really intense and really well done. And I loved this movie. I was like really into it. I just have to admit, I watched it on the Long Island Railroad on my phone, and I was just completely immersed in it.
That really is the place to
Was
watch.
it
It really
snowing?
is, right? Yeah.
Neil, what's eating you about this movie?
Okay, well, here's the thing. You mentioned the movie Alive, which is in 1993, and I knew the story, and I thought Alive was a much better movie. I was much more involved,
What?
even though the director of that movie took a little license with the story. I was much more involved with the characters and much more involved in the story. In Society of the Snow, the characters are very indistinguishable from one another. And I was not really, other than the plight of the story that I knew, I was not really involved and invested in each one of the individual characters.
Wow.
Look, if you never saw Alive, I'd say, look, the actors are committed to the roles. It is shot extremely well. But as far as an involvement in actually being emotionally invested in this, since I had known the story, I prefer Alive from 1993.
You're very cold, Neil.
Wow.
You're very cold,
Wow.
Neil.
The backyard, you already know. That's where you crashed into my azaleas. We'll have a word about that later. The kitchen. Here's where I leave myself reminders. And this is the living room. I mainly use it to watch TV. Use this one to control everything.
That was a clip from the movie Jules. It's Rafer Guzman's personal choice as we go around the panel with our critics' picks of the month. Rafer.
All right, you guys think I've got no heart? I've got a little heart warmer for you right here. It's a little indie sci-fi movie with a very unusual cast of Ben Kingsley and Jane Curtin. I guarantee you won't see that pairing anywhere else. He plays a retired guy named Milton. He lives in Pennsylvania. He's sort of a curmudgeon, the town eccentric. His daughter thinks his mind is slipping a little bit. One day, Milton goes into his backyard. He discovers that a spaceship has crashed into his garden, and there is a little green man who needs his help. He takes him in. A couple of his other neighbors find out about this, including Jane Curtin plays one of the neighbors, and they all band together to help this little alien called Jules get back home. And I know what you're saying. Didn't Steven Spielberg do a very similar film a while back? And the answer is yes. But this film has something really sweet and charming and funny about it. And I think the main joke that they really milk for all it's worth is the fact that it is a literal flying saucer and a literal little green man. So when Milton is telling people about what's happening, obviously nobody believes him. I just think it's really funny and charming. It's a very light watch. It's the kind of movie I can see Grandpa and the grandkids all watching together. Little crowd pleaser. Very fun.
I enjoyed this movie too, and
You've seen it? All right.
I've seen it. And Jane Curtin, seeing Jane Curtin was like, wow, where's she been?
She's great in it,
That was
right?
the
It's
best
great
thing
to
about
see
it.
Jane
It's
Curtin
great to see
working
Jane
again.
Curtin working. Yes, it was.
You know, it's an oddball little film, and it's
Yes.
very enjoyable, and I'm glad you mentioned that it's funny, because it is funny. And man, can Ben Kingsley do anything?
Yes.
This guy can do anything, you know?
Well,
And,
don't ask him. He always says that he can do anything. And you have to call him sir, by the way, or he gets surly. I will say that as the only person who hasn't seen this movie, I've watched the trailer like 3 times, and I just can't pull the trigger on it.
can't do
And
it.
I wonder if a lot of people feel the same way. And if they do, they need to give it a shot.
and
Yeah.
the little alien, hilarious.
Oh, the alien's great.
I know.
The alien's
It's
great.
Bill, what is your pick this month?
Well, I didn't pick a film. I picked a Harlan Coben Netflix series. Harlan Coben is kind of a pulp writer in England or in English that cranks out this stuff that Netflix just buys
Why don't you
over and
tell us
over
the
and
name
over.
of it?
It's called Fool Me Once, and it's a twisty, pulpy little with subplots palooza about a war vet with PTSD who has a secret. She's played by Michelle Keegan. And she's amazing. She's the reason to seek this thing out, because I think she's going to be a big star. Her husband is killed in a park in the first 5 minutes right in front of her, and then the dead daddy turns up on a nanny cam. For fans of AbFab, Joanna Lumley is in this thing too. As the evil stepmother, they have a lot of money, and they're backed by a pharmaceutical company, so there's a lot going on in this thing. But I have to tell you, stay with it. It has the best ending I've ever seen in a miniseries.
You know,
you will not see it coming.
You know, there's good performances in this, and not everything, obviously, which kind of you alluded to, is not what it seems.
Right.
And that's what makes it interesting, and that what makes you want to watch more episodes of this particular
But Neil,
miniseries.
is it the best ending of a miniseries ever?
Well, he
That's
hasn't
my
gotten to
question.
the end yet.
I have
bet.
not gotten
Okay,
to the
all
end
right, I
yet.
just
I'm
wanna know.
halfway through, but as I said, I'm intrigued.
It's
Keep-
cliffhangery. It's addictive. It's
right,
totally
right,
addictive.
like 24. It's like,
Yeah.
I got to watch the next
Yeah.
episode. Mike, what's your pick?
Well, my pick is a film that I am surprised how much I liked it and how good it is. It's a film called They Cloned Tyrone. Now, this is a film by Jules Taylor. It stars John Boyega, Jamie Foxx, and Tiona Paris. And it's a science fiction horror comedy. And it takes place in the hood. And let's just say the main characters are a pimp, a prostitute, and a drug dealer. And let me just tell you, by the time a third into the movie, like, you're completely with it and you get what the writer's doing. And this is a film that has a lot of social commentary. It seems like one thing on the surface, but it's really a lot of other things. And I think it succeeds where a film like Sorry to Bother You seemed more like a skit that was stretched out to be a movie. This is very complete. This keeps going places. I was so surprised and so pleased. Do not miss They Cloned Tyrone.
Well, my pick is the documentary It Ain't Over, which looks at the life of baseball great Yogi Berra. You know, this guy had a remarkable career on the field, having won 3 MVPs, winning 10 World Series championships with the Yankees. He was picked 15 times to play in the All-Star game. But these incredible, almost unparalleled accomplishments have been completely overshadowed by his goofy off-the-field persona. People remember his unique twisting of the English language with yogiisms like, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. It's like deja vu all over again. And of course, it ain't over till it's over. People also remember him from his many TV commercials, and there was even a cartoon called Yogi Bear. The real Yogi wasn't too happy about it. This documentary aims to change the perception of Yogi Berra by focusing on his incredible baseball legacy. And the mission is accomplished, as you come away from the film with a whole new, impressive perspective of the man. On hand are interviews with many celebrities, other baseball greats, as well as Yogi's adoring family members. If you're a baseball fan, you're gonna love this.
Wow, I can't believe that's over. Ain't it over? When's it over? It's finally over. Okay.
Well, the show is over. We're out of time. I want to thank Bill McCuddy, Mike Sargent, and Rafer Guzman. Join us next month on Talking Pictures.